Hello, and welcome to the Halo Lab. My name is Dani Caputi, and I am one of the founders of P.e.a.c.e Inc. P stands for People Evolve as Consciousness Expands. And one of the products we recently put out, and you can see in our live streams, is music that responds to your consciousness with the quantum-based sampling method that we developed. And if you want to know how that works, how it interacts with your consciousness and the observers, I would refer you to any of our other videos or papers. And so, but the idea is that if you have a lot of people that are listening online or in a concert hall, something like that, listening together, and minds sync up, kind of go into coherence, then the music will respond to that accordingly. And so one of the ways of doing that, if you're driving music with a continuously noisy, something that's inherently a random signal, right? Because we're using electron tunneling, and that's, as we discussed in our other videos, that's a random process. And so how do you take a random signal and turn that into music? And so that's kind of what I wanted to discuss a little bit here. And with me is my friend Millie. Say hello, Millie. So let's start with, so there's two classes of music that we've put out so far. There's tropical house style, and then there's a drone meditation style. And we can expand this to any style, but let's start with the drone music, because that's a little easier. So let me first have this on the keyboard sound. Let me change this to a drone sound at the moment. Now, typically in meditation music, kind of features drones, and it's more or less meterless, which means that there's no underlying pulse, like in most music. And most of the time you can feel music in groups of either 3 or 4, or other kinds of groups, pulses, subdivisions, things like that, and you can kind of nod your head along, tap your foot. Drone music is not like that. It's just kind of freestyle, free-floating, right? And typically, in the background, it'll consist of a major chord being played, right? So something like this, and it's just kind of held out indefinitely. And then over that, we have the random signal from the quantum noise generator picking notes on a pentatonic scale.
What's the pentatonic scale?
So, a pentatonic scale is a group of notes that all sound resonant together. And so I'll give you an example. Let me switch back to piano for a minute. So, if you just play on the white keys, if you have a kid coming up to the piano and they just do kind of that, and you're not going to get anything that sounds good. But if you say, hey, do that, but on the black keys, right? It sounds a lot more in sync with each other, all the notes. And that's because the black keys make up something called the pentatonic scale, right? And so it doesn't just have to be on the black keys, that can be in any key. So for example, if we're in the key of C, then our notes that are on the C pentatonic scale are C, D, E, G, and A. And you can pretty much just play these in any order, in any rhythm, and it'll sound good together, with drone music especially. And so that's what the random noise source is generating over the drone sound. Let me switch back to the drone sound, just to kind of give melodic interest. So it'll sound kind of like this. Right, where you have a major chord in the bass, in the background. It kind of just sounds like a background hum, and then pentatonic notes in the melody over it. Now, that alone, the problem with just using that is that the pentatonic scale sounds good no matter what you do. And we want to motivate the listeners to go into coherence, to actually sync up with the other minds and feel connected to everybody around them that's listening. And so, in order to motivate that, what we do is when we see a spike in the coherence, meaning a lot of signals from the crowd all at once in our data, then we go up to, we modulate, we basically change keys counterclockwise on the circle of fifths.
What's the circle of fifths?
Circle of fifths is a musical cycle. So a fifth is exactly what you would think it is. It's, if you know solfege, you know, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, right? So do to so, that's a fifth. And you can keep going up fifths. So if we start in C, which is usually, let's say that's our home key, we're going to go up to G, then we'll go up to D, that's a fifth above G, then A, E, B, and you can keep going, F sharp, C sharp, F, and then we're back to C. So it's a cycle. And so that is going up the circle of fifths, and usually it's thought of as when you go up the circle of fifths, you're getting brighter, because what you're doing is you're actually adding sharps in the key signature. And if you're going counterclockwise, you're adding flats, which in theory at least makes the music darker. So it's kind of a paradox in a way, because with this drone music I've found that actually going towards the darker sounds actually makes it sound more uplifting. And let's say we're in this key, and then I have pentatonic scale over that, and then there's an event of coherence. It'll go up a fourth, or counterclockwise on the circle of fifths, and then switch to that pentatonic scale, right? And then let's say it goes into some more coherence, does this for a few minutes, then it'll go up to there, right? And so you can kind of hear it actually is getting brighter and brighter each time. And I think the reason for that goes back to the fact that this drone music is not really in any kind of meter, or there's no pulse underlying it, so, and there's no harmonic rhythm either, meaning there's no changes in chords. It's just one chord that's kind of just holding out. And so it kind of functions as this singular chord, kind of functions as the dominant chord in the new key. Does that all make sense?
A little bit.
Yeah, cool.
So what does this have to do with consciousness?
Field consciousness, as we call it, is detectable by the electron tunneling sampler. And that device is creating the signal, the noise signal, the electronic noise signal that comes into the computer as more or less random zeros and ones, right? Where we have a way of sampling out the part of that is interacting with field consciousness, and then using that to drive the music. So it's a feedback effect. The user, the person listening, is paying attention to the music, and then it becomes more engaging when they're in more coherence. And then that in turn increases the effect of the mind-machine interaction, and then the feedback loop continues. And using something like music is a way to really kick this feedback loop into high gear. Most of the time in experiments they've done in the lab, they found people are able to influence these devices on a very tiny level when they're just looking at a graph going up or down on a screen. So, and the effect kind of declines over time. The more people do it, the more it regresses towards the mean and showing not really an effect. And you know what we found in our research lab is that when we add any kind of engaging activity, whether that be music or lighting or some other application, that is able to kick the effect size of the mind-machine interaction into higher gear. It kind of turbocharges it.
So we learned about drone music. What
Yeah.
other kind of music can we learn about today?
One of my favorite genres is tropical house, which is basically you have kind of pan flute sounds over tropical like drum beats and usually kicks and echoey snaps, things of that sort. It's a subgenre of electronic dance music, but it's less bassy and it's a little bit more melodic. So it's not so much just meant to keep you dancing for hours and hours and hours and sweating out of your mind, but it's kind of like a slightly chilled down version of that kind of EDM is probably the best way to explain it. So examples of tropical house artists, well, Kygo definitely comes to mind, as I think he's really the biggest one in that genre. And so what I did, and what I noticed, I looked at a whole bunch of Kygo's music, some of the others, and what I noticed is that the pan flute sound is very often, the melodies, the key melodies, is kind of just in a pentatonic scale. For example, this is one of Kygo's remixes of Take On Me. And if you'll notice, all those notes are fit on a pentatonic scale, right? And so I'm kind of just sticking to a pentatonic scale, and then just making it tropical housey. And the same principles apply for this as with the drone music coherence. Coherence will motivate a modulation or a key change, or it will motivate a change in tune, or it will kick in a piano solo. One of those three things, depending on what exactly is happening in the device. So the melody is kind of just picked out from pentatonic notes, and there's some other algorithms behind the process that shapes it into kind of a melodic tropical house type of sound. But the unique thing about this music is that tropical house genre, it does not normally feature modulations, I noticed, which is a shame because I really like modulations, so I threw those in there as one of those things to motivate group coherence, modulations being key change. And the other neat thing about the tropical house genre that I think that I've put in there is I kind of mix it with an element from earlier rock music that's not in. So a lot of tropical house music uses very much the infamous 1-5-6-4 pattern, sometimes in different order. So like that's kind of like like that kind of progression. But what I did was I put in a kind of Mixolydian rock progression.
But Danny,
Yeah.
what's Mixolydian?
What's Mixolydian? So, if you know your major scale, right? Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. And if you take those same sequence of notes and you start on scale degree number 5, you'll end up getting a sound where you have exactly the same scale, except the 7th degree of it is flat. So, instead of this, it's... Hear the difference? And so that is used in almost, well, a whole bunch of rock music. I don't want to say almost all necessarily, but a very common progression in rock is the 1 chord, which uses do, mi, and so of the scale, and then the flat 7 chord, which uses that Mixolydian note there, right? And then this one, the 4 chord, right? So here's an example. Na, 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 na. So anyway, I basically used that progression in this tropical house music, which kind of fuses together the tropical house and rock genre. And so that'll be an interesting, that's kind of an experiment within an experiment. I don't necessarily expect this particular niche genre to be something that everybody loves, but hey, I gotta do the type of music I like when I'm writing, and this will hopefully inspire more of you guys out there to take a look at what you can do with these devices and program your own music with them.